Well, good afternoon then, and welcome to this part of your course curriculum for the week. My name is Nico Skeepers, and it's my privilege to present to you three modules as part of the CPMP development program. I will be overviewing leadership, motivation and ethics with you. The way I thought I'd handle it is to put leadership and motivation together as one theme, really, with these two components hanging from it. And then whilst ethics, of course, deals with all and sundry and pretty much everything we do, I thought that let's cover the motivation and leadership part of this curriculum, and then we'll deal with ethics as a separate component. So the presentation that you will be listening to and looking at whilst we are here talking to each other on opposite sides of an electronic PC screen, which is not ideal, I guess. I would have preferred to have been with you guys and interacting with you on a one-on-one. Unfortunately, given the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, that for the moment and looks like for the foreseeable future is an impossibility. We'll make do with what we have. So I will try and make it fun from a distance. There will be opportunity afterwards, obviously, for you to ask your questions and for us to have some form of discussion. And I look forward to that, I really do. But suffice to say, what we're going to be focusing on then for the next bit of this curriculum of this week would then be the issue of leadership and how that relates to where we are in business and life today, and then looking at the most motivational aspects thereof. We're going to be talking some history, we're going to be talking some research, we're going to be talking mostly contemporary issues regarding leadership and motivation, and we're going to specifically talk about this issue of leadership and motivation and how people are motivated / inspired within the context of the South African environment, our very peculiar environment, which we will talk about a little later. So if you could perhaps just relax a bit and enjoy what's about to come. In terms of the assessments, there will be a set of multiple choice questions that it would be expected of you to complete. All I can say to you is everything that I say in this presentation, in the audio part of it, and everything that is on your slides. Your slides are your notes. That is on your slides is in play for the multiple choice questions. Okay, let's. Having said that, then let's move forward. Now, in history, people, and in fact today, people are always in admiration of and admire and have respect for the people that are out there and are recognized as leaders in society, as leaders in community, and leaders in business, and leaders in church. And especially today with the extent of social media and the way that people are able to advertise themselves, there are a lot of leaders, and I use this term loosely, that pop up and that are now visible to, let's call it, the general population out there. And there has been a lot talked and a lot said about what makes good leaders, and there are books written about I can't remember his last name now, Jack something, the CEO of Yeah, there goes my memory, but I will get back to you on this one. I'll try and Google. I'll try and Google. I'll be busy here. It'll come to me. Guru. There are books written about Richard Branson of the Virgin Group. There are books written about Bill Clinton and about Barack Obama, and there are books written about the Eastern philosophers and the Eastern leaders, and everybody tries to distill from legend what makes these people tick and what makes them good leaders and what makes them capable of inspiring and capable of motivating people to do what people probably would not have done if it was left up to their own devices. There are oodles of stories in biblical literature, in the Bible, in the Quran, in any other religious writing. We try and percolate out these historical figures, like an Abraham and like a Moses and like a Joseph, and we try and uncover what makes them good leaders. Why are people spending time listening to them and reading about them? Now, there has been numerous authors that were writing in the East and in the West. Back in historical times, we had Plato and we had Machiavelli. We had Confucius from the East. Confucius was really one of the earlier writings, around sort of 500 before Christ, where he used this concept of the virtues, or the day of leadership, the DE, the day of effective leaders. And the way he looked at a leader is to say, to be a natural leader, you have to show love. You have to show the concept of yin. And Li, he talked about proper conduct. He talked about piety in the sense of humbleness. Not piousness, piety, to be humble, to have your feet on the ground. And he always talks about if you go to look at his readings about Zhang Rong, the doctrine of the mean. And really what he means by that is that a leader should be seen to live his life in moderation, with a large degree of sincerity, and he should of course be objective in how he does what he does, and honesty. There's got to be that transparency and that honesty. And if you think about looking at, for example, some of our political leaders here in South Africa, when we are motivated and we are inspired by them, it is because we sense this issue of honesty and sincerity and objectivity in their demeanor, in their behavior, which encourages us to follow them. It kind of like resonates with our minds. And we will become apostles, and we will swear blind that what a Cyril Ramaphosa says is true, and what a Bishop Desmond Tutu says is true, and we don't question it because we believe implicitly in this sincerity and in this honesty and in the moderation that we like to see in our leaders. On the other side, let's look at when we fall out with our leaders, when there is suddenly this degree of let's call it coolness that sets in. What do we generally see? We don't see moderation, we see excess. We start seeing political leaders living in excess. Too much money, too much wealth, too much tenders, too many cars, too big houses, too this, too that. We start seeing excesses. As soon as we start seeing that, we start looking at this issue, but how sincere are these people, and how much of what they do is for self-enrichment other than because they are sincerely trying to inspire or motivate a nation? How objective are they, and of course how honest then are they after that? Then we start questioning everything that they say and what they stand for. We can just use our local some of our local South African political leaders and even some business leaders. And there will be many examples which I will not name. It's also not in the test. If we look at a cultural leader, is a guy like Sun Tzu. Now, we've all, I suppose, to an extent, grew up with a guy like Sun Tzu. He is well known for his books around the act of war, and he, of course, was a Chinese, I suppose, warlord, but also a philosopher and a writer. He was a poet, a guy that was well regarded in his day. Now, Sun Tzu, in his book, The Supreme Art of War, where he really puts down quite a lot of characteristics of what a leader in battle would look like. And in battle too, what do? We have to motivate and we have to inspire our men to follow us. And we do the same thing in our communities as leaders, in our schools as leaders, in our businesses as leaders, in our churches as leaders, in our households as leaders. You can't rule and dictate by force. You have to, one way or the other, find a way to inspire and to motivate. And what better way is there in war or in battle to inspire and motivate? Because it's not something that most of us would happily and gladly go and engage in. Don't know about you, but I would happily stay away from battle and from war. I really don't like being shot at. But Sun Tzu has said in his Act of War that he says the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. If the mind is willing, he says, the flesh could go on and on and on and on without needing too much sustenance in order to survive. Isn't that what we're looking for when we as leaders try and inspire our people? Now, I'm not for a second saying that we should see our colleagues or our family members or our community members or our peers as enemies. But what we do is we try and inspire them to join us without resistance into whatever the cause is, whether that cause is a social cause, a philosophical cause, a commercial stroke business cause, or in Sun Tzu's case, of course, battle. He's lifted out 5 traits: intelligence, credibility, humaneness, courage, and discipline. Again, this thing of discipline shows its head, and that is Sun Tzu. He's also said that every organization, and this is obviously an army, is characterized by processes and culture that influences the conduct of the business. He referred to this as the Tao, the way. Now we know that every business, every society, every community, every family has a way. You know, my family has a way that is different to the way of your family. Neither of this is right or wrong. They're just different. And he recognizes that within a war machine, within an army or a military organization, there is a culture and that influences the conduct of that particular business or that particular unit. And this he referred to as the Tao, T-A-O. I found you an example of what this guy looked like. What an ugly dude, but there he is. Now, those were some of the old thinking. Is this applicable today? And if it is or it is not, what has changed between 500 before Christ and 2020 after Christ? You have to ask yourselves. And it's clear for us, it's clear that the old doctrine, although there is still some relevance and maybe something that one can learn from that for sure, things have changed, man. We're living in VUCA. We're living in VUCA times. Everything is VUCA'd up, so to speak. And if you want to know what VUCA means, just look around you, man. what do we see? We see volatility. We see unpredictability. We see complexity, and we see an ambiguousness that we have never seen before. The environment in which people today operate and find and eke out a living, the way societies interact, the way businesses interact, it is volatile. Who could have thought? Who could have thought in the middle of March, towards the end of February, in the middle of March, that COVID-19, for example, and the global pandemic would have such an incredible and quick impact on economies worldwide? Who could have foreseen that? Who could have foreseen big businesses close? Who could have foreseen that in South Africa, 40-something% now of our households don't have enough money in the month to buy food for themselves, let alone other, and I will put luxuries in here, like a roof over your head and transport. This is just 40-something% now. I think it's 44 or 45%, looking at the latest research done that just came out now in the beginning of July. Of our households, we used to be around 18 to 20%. We are 44, 45% now of households in our country don't have enough money for food for the month. How unpredictable was that? Who could have foreseen that? And now, in trying to work our way around this, issues are complex. People and issues are volatile. And if there are 10 persons or people in a room, there will be 10 different opinions. Everything is ambiguous. Everybody has a view. And everybody's view, to an extent, is right, or equally right and equally wrong. On the other hand, we have social media that drives all of this. And in amongst all this VUCA, we as leaders in our societies and in our households and in our churches and in our businesses and on a project site, we have to keep all of this together. The challenge for us is always and has always been to build a culture of trust. Think about this on a building site. Think about this in your business environment. Think about this in your domestic environment at home. It's about building trust. It's about building integrity. It's about building accountability. It's about working together. It's about collaboration, working together. It's about innovation. Ultimately, it's about performance. And ultimately, it's about being successful. Ultimately, it's about being successful. I have a little story about a consultant for you, Now, you may or may not appreciate consultants. I believe that the role of consultants are in business certainly are busy diminishing. I really don't have any reason why I'm thinking it, but I do. I just have it's an impression that I have, I guess, that over time people will be able to sort themselves out without the help of third-party type consultants. But I don't want to say too much about that. That is an aside. It really is an aside. But I just got onto the topic when I talked a little bit about the story I have to tell you about leadership gurus. Now, the story goes like this, and if you've heard it before, then just switch off, go make a cup of coffee. The story goes like this: that a while ago, let's just say in the US, why not? Let's position it there. A very large organization was experiencing some incredible challenges within their environment, and the executive of that particular business, one way or the other, just couldn't fix it. They just couldn't come to grips with what needs to be done. So in desperation, they invited a world-renowned leadership consultant to help them. This guy comes with a huge reputation, and of course he also comes with a huge price tag. So on this particular day that he was to address the company on the issues of change and change management, etc., The executive got all the senior managers and middle managers of the business together, and they rented out a conference hall, and everybody was sitting there expecting some advice from this guru, some sage advice from this guru. And he eventually pitched up and he went up to the podium, and his first words, to everybody's surprise, were, "Can you guess what I'm going to say?" Of course, they all replied no. Quite puzzled. No, they replied. So he says, "Well then, I can't teach you something that you don't already know." He replied enigmatically, and with that he walked off the stage and he left the venue. Of course, everybody was fairly perplexed, and the issue remained unresolved. Many weeks later, the executive were deliberating whether they need to send this guru, a second invitation, which they then did. But this time, preparation, they told all their managers, senior and middle, it was at the conference venue, "Now guys, listen up carefully here. When he asks the question, everybody says, 'No, we don't know.'" And there I talk myself into a corner. I do apologize. Yes, they said. "We will now, when he asks the question, we will say yes. We know exactly what he was going to say." I apologize for that. I had a little mind fart. Sitting here looking at my computer screen and the wall trying to tell a story. So he arrives and he's on the podium again, and his first words to the group was, "Can you guess what I'm going to say?" And the crowd all said, "Yes, we know what you're going to say." So unflinchingly, the consultant responded, "Well then, what use is there for me to tell you anything if you know what I'm going to say?" And with that, he left again. You can guess where the story is going to. A few weeks later, they invite him back. This time around, they say, "Right, guys, listen up, rehearse this. We want half the room to say no, we want the other half of the room to say yes when he asks the question." So, sure as damn, he's on the podium. "Can you guess what I'm going to say?" he asks this group. So in response, half of the organization shouts yes, and the other half shouts no. The consultant remains unruffled. So he sort of stared at the crowd and he replied, "Well then, those that know should sit down and talk with those that don't know. And then together you will have all the answers." And with that he left, never to return. The next morning, and after some deliberation, the CEO gathered the organization together once more. He finally understood the message. The message is quite simple, that we can find the answer to our problem from within our organization. We have, within the organization, we have the wisdom and experience. The problem that we have is not our knowledge and our wisdom. The problem that we have is our self-belief and our self-assurance in these times. Our self-belief and our self-assurance in these times. More than anything, leaders operate today in environments that are VUCA'd. Our skills is not so much now about our technical abilities, about how good we are at using the tried and tested methods to fix a problem. Using textbooks and business schools to fix a problem. The issue for leaders today in our country, and for leaders to motivate people in our country, in the world today, is to recognize that our challenges is of an adaptive nature. I nearly said adoptive, of an adaptive nature. We have to adapt. And we have to find ways to adapt. The knowledge sits within us. The experience sits within us. Collectively, it is there. It is how much self-belief and how much confidence we have to adapt to this ongoing change in our environment. The new challenges for leaders are not so much know-how. It's becoming soft skills now. In order to lead and to motivate and to inspire, it's all about soft skills now. We talk about contextual intelligence. Contextual intelligence is this issue of looking at hindsight, foresight, and insight. It brings these three components together. Hindsight, foresight, insight. If you have the hindsight to understand what is happening and what has happened and why it has happened, the perspective, the linkages, the context of what happened, and you have foresight enough that you have the ability to clearly articulate what you wish to become for yourself or for your business or for your household or for your community, what you and how you can clearly articulate your goals and your aspirations. Once you have that, then insight becomes important, because insight is now the convergence of hindsight and foresight. It is now making the right decisions, knowing what you know, to get to there where you clearly articulated you want to be. You need to have strategic intelligence. You need to anticipate competitor behavior. We have to identify trends and patterns. Wherever we are, we have to identify trends and patterns, because it provides a conceptual system of leadership for change. Because the economic landscape is changing all the time. With that, the organization's landscape is changing all the time. With that, every landscape around you is changing all the time. You have to be agile in how you learn. You have to be adaptable. You have to be able to adapt what you learn into the current context of where you are and where you are operating as a leader. There's the topic of sense making. There's a lot written about that. You can go and look at it in your time. But sense making relates to the process of making sense of a current reality. It's about being able to pull the strings together and to get a picture, and not to have the head in the sand type attitude. Events around us are confusing. They're ambiguous. They're unexpected. Sense making helps us put all these different messages we get from all over together into some coherent image, some picture that we can live with. Visioning relates to creating a map of the future. It's about, for example, in your household, to sit the family down and to say, this is the picture that I have of our December holiday, for example. Or this is the picture that I have for our next Easter weekend, or for Christmas Day, or for Yom Kippur, or whatever day it is. This is the picture I have. And to inspire the family members, to motivate them to see that picture that you see. We should be doing the same thing in our businesses. And with that comes storytelling. Storytelling is a powerful, powerful tool to get your view, to get your inspiration, to get your vision, to get it out there. Storytelling among stakeholders serves multiple purposes. It highlights your company's purpose. You can talk to people about your company's purpose. You can use the same tool to socialize new employees, socialize new members on your project team, to transfer knowledge in the workplace when mentoring, to facilitate internal and external communication, developing teams and leadership skills, engaging with clients and customers. Just look at South Africa's brands. If you look at our solid, let's call it reputable brands right now, we look at, and of course, if there are 10 people in the room with me, then we will have 10 or 11 different opinions. But if we look at businesses in South Africa, like, for example, Harley Davidson, we look at businesses like Porsche, we look at businesses like Assurance, We look at Discovery. We look at King Price. We look at Capitec. There are many others. We look at Starbucks. If you're into the cycling fraternity, you look at Cyclelab, for example. I'm not throwing these names out. I'm putting them in context because these are people that tell stories. They convince you with their story and motivate you with their story and inspire you with their story, to engage with them, to show less and less and less resistance. If it's insurance you're looking for, who do you talk to? If it is a medical aid that you're looking for, who would be your port of call? At least one of your first ports of call. If you want to go and buy yourself a bicycle, who would you go and talk to? If you feel like a cup of coffee, where would you go to? We get inspired by the story. I don't know if you remember, but many years ago when Mug and Bean just came into South Africa, or opened up their branches or their network of restaurants in South Africa, they had this beautiful story of Mr. Mug and Mr. Bean. These were two old American coffee traders, coffee bean traders, and they built this whole story of Mug and Bean around Mr. Mug and Mr. Bean, who were the old coffee traders and who found this particularly beautiful blend of coffee, etc., 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 etc. And their old menus all reflected this, all images of an 1800s or early 1900s America with the smokestacks and these two gentlemen in their business suits and waistcoats and all the rest. You can just imagine it, brewing the perfect cup of coffee. They tell a story and they engage us in that story, and they motivate us and they inspire us. Exactly what good leaders should be doing. Good leaders should be authentic. Even Sun Tzu and Confucius in 500 and 550 before Christ recognized that a leader should be authentic in his behavior, in the way he puts himself out there. There should not be impulses or hidden agendas, and if there are, if these things come onto the cards, a leader loses credibility within seconds. And again, I wish to refer you to global political leaders, global business leaders that's gone from hero to zero in literally one day. Why? Because people uncovered hidden agendas. There was a sinisterism about what they were doing, and suddenly there was an issue with their character. And that is why what happened with them. They talk about PsyCap, psychological capital. And this relates to the state of development that influences your level of satisfaction and performance. Now, PsyCap is a bit of a synergistic effect. It's quite powerful. That pulls together 4 psychological states, which was represented by the acronym HERO. HERO. It's hope, efficacy, resilience, and optimism. Leaders should show hope, the will and the way, the desire, the ambition, the expectation. People want to see that from their leaders. You need to have confidence to succeed. Your ability and your belief in your ability to take on and succeed in challenges is what gives you context, what gives you credibility. Of course, you're going to be met with adversity. Of course, there's going to be opposition. Of course, there's going to be bounce back. But how resilient are you to adapt to these changes and these stressful demands? And the leader should show optimism. The O of hero is optimism. It's your capacity to explain positive events as permanent, personal, and pervasive causes. I was watching a program on Supersport the other night when they were talking to Dale Steyn, and he was making the comment where he was saying, but you know, when he used to take wickets in any type of cricket, even the more junior levels of cricket, but especially at international level, and he was making this comment, when he would take a wicket, he would go crazy, and the cameras would be on him, and it would be veins popping in his neck, and his face would be red, and his eyes would be wide open, and he would look pretty much almost demented, to a point where he said, but you know, when he walks in the street, kids are afraid to come up to him because they think he's some kind of crazy person. And it took a guy like Faf de Klerk, who at that time I think was probably the captain or certainly a teammate, to take him aside and to say to him that, you know, you need to celebrate your wickets, because celebrating your wickets is what encourages this team to go beyond what they need to do. It takes them to a different level of motivation and inspiration if you celebrate your successes. Because he was obviously now trying to tone down his response to taking wickets, you know, tone it down. He was told not to go out, go crazy, because that's how you really motivate. There should be a lot of creative thinking and innovative behavior that sits with leaders. Creativity is projected. I don't know if you guys know this. If you do, then again, go make another cup of coffee. Creativity is projected as the third most important skill that's needed in 2020. The third most important skill. Because leader behavior and that creativity shapes company culture. It's an important predictor. Creativity is an important predictor for innovation in the workplace. There is no doubt about that. Your leadership is an important driver of innovation. And it's an important driver of innovation in two ways. One, it establishes a work environment that is conducive to creativity and subsequent innovation. If you are innovative in your approach, just your behavior will establish an environment. The stuff that you say, that you compliment on, the stuff that you shake hands on, that you pat a back on, that is the stuff that would be conducive to everybody in your organization, everybody in your household, everybody in whatever landscape you're in, whatever situation you're in, would become creative and would be looking for innovation. It also drives and manages strategic innovation goals. Because if we're looking for innovation in our workplace, then without a doubt we set ourselves futuristic, we set ourselves goals of what we want to attain. And more, these goals will be innovative. They will be disruptive. Innovative, and they will be disruptive. And this capability affords a competitive advantage for your organization. As a leader, you have to adapt to global mindsets, of course. You have to show cultural intelligence. You have to understand and relate to culturally diverse contexts and culturally diverse situations. Now, we are going to talk about that later on, about the specific cultural demands and diversity demands that the specific South African demographic places on our leaders today and places on our organizations today. And then there should be, finally, in terms of contemporary thinking, there should be a collective leadership capability that involves all employees. That means that everybody takes responsibility for the success of a team or an organization. So today's leadership mandate is not about exercising power or authority at all anymore. That's the old doctrine. It's rather about creating more leaders by empowering employees at all levels of the organization. What are the upsides of this capability? Well, it affords you one thing: decentralized decision making. You can start pushing decision making down to lower levels within your organization. Higher levels of collaboration as well. More and more of your people feel part of the team. And when you feel part of a team, you are motivated and you are inspired. That's what we're working towards. We try to convert good leadership into motivation and into inspiration. And then one would hope that more creativity, more accountability, more decentralized decision making, in one way or the other, if it's executed flawlessly, must deliver outstanding business results. Unless your business model is flawed, it has to deliver outstanding business results. And I can tell you this, that consistently cultivating and applying these capabilities is a definitive route to leadership excellence and results in our world today. Now, the next few slides that we're going to be looking at, we're going to go over quite quickly. Some of it is some research, some of some academic thinking. But if what I have just told you now for the last couple of minutes, if that can sink in and can make sense to you, then I believe that my job is done with you for today. But there has been some research on leadership styles conducted within the Project Management Institute, and the idea was try and find out if a project manager's leadership style is a success factor on projects or not. Now, I guess you will all say to me that, yeah, it is. It has to be. Why should it not be? Well, there was a literature review conducted, and all I can say to you, and you will come to know this later, that it had a surprising outcome. Is your job complicated? Yeah, it is. I have put down there a workflow, I guess, of project management stages through a project life cycle. This is stuff that you all know about. I'm not teaching you anything or showing you anything that you don't know. Here it is, all of it. And these are all the stakeholders on a project that in one way or the other you need to keep happy, that are one way or the other involved. One way or the other, all of these people need to be motivated and inspired to see it your way. I suppose I can say that, to see it your way. So is your job difficult? Oh, hell yes. If you look at slide 11, you can literally just read through there. Pretty much all of this I have said already, without the benefit of the academics that actually wrote the literature. But there it is. You can go and read through all of that in your own time. General management literature on leadership styles and competence. How people view leadership depends on their culture. We'll deal with that a little later. That's why I'm going through this rather quickly. Yes, it depends on the culture. If you look at, for example, some of our Arabian friends, to a large extent, they idolize their leaders. The shahs or the sheikhs are idolized. They are literally carried on high, and they are respected beyond belief as the holders of all knowledge and certainly most of the wealth. Iranians, on the other hand, seek supremacy and strength. And that's why their religious leaders, like the Ayatollah, for example, comes in as a strong uber leader, supreme leader, with a no nonsense, it's my way or the highway type attitude. It works in those particular nations. In all the stans, the Afghanistans and the Kazakhstans and the Iraqis and the Iranians. For that reason, the Ayatollahs, that religious leadership is incredibly strong and very, very well respected, and idolized and worshipped, and all of that. Whereas the Orientals, as we already noticed from early on in the lecture, in the presentation, the Orientals are more with your leader should be humble. Yes, he's the leader, but he is almost always the last one to speak. He's almost the last guy to come into a room. I've had a few years ago, I've had some dealings negotiating an import contract with a Japanese company. This was in the area of chemical additives, and I was in Tokyo, and it was a strange, very, very un-Western, what we are kind of used to here type situation. It was this very, very big table, and And on the other side of the table were, I can't remember now, but 8 or 9 or 10 or so Japanese people from the company representing their company, different departments of the company, and on the other side of the table was little me. And they were conversing with each other in Japanese. Of course, only one person there could speak a little bit of English, and he was the conduit back to me. And it was a strange environment. But what I did pick up there is that despite introductions being made all around, I never really got the impression as to who is their Uber leader in that particular meeting, who would have the final word. They were very much working together. It was almost that everybody has an equal opportunity and an equal voice in terms of that particular situation. And it's only later that that I realized that the individual who I thought and who I addressed most of what I was saying to, thinking that he is the decision maker, actually was not the decision maker. It was somebody completely different. In fact, one of the weaker looking people in that particular meeting. It was an incredibly big lesson for me to learn. I'm still humbled by it, and I don't make that mistake again or anymore. But it was just the way they were. Very humble people. And even when they took me out to dinner that night, the company general manager who had the final say was the meekest and the mildest and the most humblest. I don't want to say too much about this now. What else does literature study says about leadership management, leadership styles? The last point there, that leaders cannot be effective without their management abilities, and managers cannot be fruitful without being a good leader. Now, that was fortunately done in 2002. All of that has been VUCA'd out of existence. We now know that good leaders does not necessarily make good managers. And we do know that good managers don't necessarily make good leaders. And we see this in business. We see this everywhere, every day. You need somebody who can inspire, and then you need somebody who can, let's say, do the day-to-day. And both of those individuals need to be happy in that environment. I need to be happy doing the day-to-day, comfortable doing the day-to-day, while somebody else is comfortable and happy in his skin doing the leading thing, the inspiring thing, the motivating thing, getting me to believe in him by his storytelling, by his visioning, by putting out hope and desire and a picture. I have to. I have to. Somebody has to. I will be happy doing the day-to-day. Me being good at doing the day-to-day is not the same as me being good as a leader. And very often, certainly in let's call it the late 1990s, 2000s business, your generally good workers eventually work themselves up the hierarchy to where they become leaders of men, and they're not very often comfortable being a leader of men. So manager leaders characteristics should include self-knowledge, insight, understanding of the world, to serve and to unlock. All of this is very true. To create a motivating environment, stimulating ownership. Now, in the South African context, we have to think about defining leadership within a cross-cultural mindset. And I'm going to be talking now about whites. I'm going to be talking about ethnic black groups. And I'm going to be talking about our Malayan, our colored groups, our San groups. And I don't mean any derogatory issue with this. I just want to use words that we kind of use day to day to kind of place people in ethnic context. So I mean no harm by it. I mean no foul by it. It's just the way that we in South Africa presently, I suppose, define peoples. So within the workplace, we have a Zulu person working next to a Cape Colored person, working next to a South African Afrikaans speaking person, working next to an Indian from Durban. We all grow up differently, and yet as a leader, we need to lead and offer motivation and offer inspiration across all these different diversity issues: languages, religion, race, gender, all of that poses great challenges, specifically within the South African context. Slide number 40 gives you an idea of the difference between bosses and leaders. Those are things that I suppose we all subliminally know. A boss would drive an employee, a leader would coach an employee. We've dealt with this earlier on. You can have a look at that at your leisure. Slide 15 also refers to pretty much the same kind of thing. So does slide 16. These things, guys, these slides, just read through them. Read through them as your class notes. All right. It's important knowledge and background to have, not something that really I believe I need to lecture about. But there it is. In terms of leadership in the 20th century, there has been kind of 6 schools of leadership identified. We'll deal with them very briefly, each of them. There's the trade school, the behavioral school, the contingency school, the visionary school, the emotional intelligence school, and then the competency school. To an extent, all of this has kind of been VUCA'd out of existence. But the trade school it is what makes the person a leader. It's almost like you can't be taught to be a leader. It's what you have innate in your personality, your hard management skills, your self-confidence, your emotional, your EQ, your physical appearance. You know, how imposing do you look? You know, how tall, how muscular, how big, how imposing you are. That was back in the 1940s. That was what the trade school was looking at. More in the 1990s, there were work done that showed that different traits are now being identified. It's drive and ambition, it's desire to lead and influence, honesty, integrity, confidence, intelligence, technical know-how. A lot like what Sun Tzu and even Confucius said back there in the beginning, if you can remember this. Honesty, integrity, drive and ambition, a desire to lead, confidence. Turner, in 1999, identified 7 traits: a problem-solving ability, a results orientation, energy and initiative, self-confidence, perspective, communication, negotiating ability. None of this now refers to how good are you at your job. This is how good are you at working with people and people's problems, and to what extent you can channel them towards a positive outcome, a sustainable outcome. We look at the contingency school. It says that businesses at different times in a business's life cycle, it desires, it needs different types of leadership. The contingency school says that sometimes a business needs a supportive leader. Sometimes it needs a participative leader. Sometimes it needs an achievement-oriented leader. And, you know, we should be matching a leader's abilities and capabilities with the particular situation within the workplace. Again, you can read through slide 23 at your own time. Then there's the visionary or the charismatic school. This refers to Jack Welch is his name, Jack Welch. This refers to those people, you know, and like a Richard Branson, they're out there, they're visionary, they're charismatic, they're just larger than life. Is that always good? No, it's not always good. Is it always required? No, it's not always required. But there is a time and a place for those types of skills and that particular skill set to come out and to work its magic, to weave its magic in business, as it is to weave its magic in the household or in a community. There's the emotional intelligence school, which now starts relating more to the softer issues, these issues of being visionary, coaching, democratic, etc., etc. Then there's the competency school. It says competence can be learned. So leaders can be made and not just born. Now, would you agree with me or would you not agree with me? There are different combinations of competencies can lead to different styles of leadership. That's appropriate in different circumstances. It can be technical or intellectual. Can you see that the competency school kind of puts together all the different sort of thinking on leadership? If you look at a project management, typical project management, the stages of it, you'll see that different styles are needed in at different times within a project. There's a leadership style, there's a leadership type, and also the nature of the team as you work your way through the project management, through the project towards closeout. Now, within the South African context, we might have some fun here, and I'm certainly going to point out some, I suppose, one or two radical concepts to you. Again, please understand how I use the words. I'm in no way trying to be derogatory. I'm in no way saying one race or one gender or one language or one religion is superior to the others. I'm using these descriptive words as a way of trying to get a message across in, I hope, a respectful nature. Looking at South Africa, we're the rainbow nation, aren't we? Now put yourself in the position now as a leader, and you need to inspire and you need to motivate people within the context of South Africa. How are we doing on diversity? Are we still an us and them, or are we now becoming a we? We're all supposed to be one rainbow nation, but perhaps we're not. We all profess to be colorblind when we are not. Intellectually, we are all not racist. We always will deny that there's a problem with ourselves. It's always somebody else. There's always a finger being pointed at another individual. And we say things like, some of my best friends are black or gay. My mother was, well, I'm not a... But they always, we say, but they always. Black people cannot be racist. Look at that bowl of fruit. What do you see? I'm trying to show you something here. Some of you might see the bowl. Some of you might see that it's actually a painting and not a real bowl. It's not a photograph. It's a painting. Some of you might be focusing on the bananas, some on the grapes. Some might see the patterns. Some might see this. But what I'm trying to say here is that we all look at the same picture, but we all see different things. So when we start embracing, as leaders in our country, as leaders in our society, if we start embracing the issue of diversity, of understanding that we are different peoples, there's no better or worse, there is no us and them, it's just us. With our different cultural backgrounds, our different histories, with our different stories, if we can understand that, embrace that, and we can include all of this, the value is for sure that our businesses will improve. Our project outcomes will improve. However we manage, however we measure, it will improve. Having cross-cultural people working together for sure improves innovation. It for sure serves communities. Because we are different people, we can understand our client base differently. We can have empathy. I might not necessarily have empathy with somebody else, but you may well have, because you guys grew up together. You understand one another better. And we attract the best talent. Bring your whole self to the work. And promoting a speak-up culture. Again, I'm going to brush over these slides. That is just a little bit more about inclusion. Reasons to embrace diversity in South Africa right now. Legal compliance, we have to, of course, to be seen to be fair or ethical. And, of course, managing our reputation. But how many of our businesses today and our leaders today really truthfully embrace diversity within our cultures, diversity within our businesses, within our communities. And when I say embrace, I mean respect it, understand it, and work with it. Types of diversity and culture, very quickly going through this. There's social diversity, we have value diversity, informational diversity. We come from different backgrounds, we're different ages, different races, different ethnics. There is nothing about the South African community that is homogenous. We are so incredibly diverse. And within every community, we come from different histories, with different biases and different stereotypings. And it's easy for conflict to arise. And as leaders, we need to understand that conflict will arise where people are not like-minded, when they do have different ideas, views, experience, and perspectives. On the one hand, a leader can say, oh, you know, this is just ridiculous. I just cannot function with all of this. It's like trying to herd cats. Whereas another leader will say, hang on a sec, well, this is amazing. We have all these different ideas and views and perspectives. Surely putting it all together, we can extract what is best for our business. Remember what is best for our business. This cannot be pie in the sky. Think about this. What are your responses to sport quotas, to revealing clothing in the workplace, to the Zulu ritual of slaughtering a cow in your front yard, being called the yellow bones, black tax? These are all realities of our country, which some of us may or may not know about, but that's because we don't know about this. We bring different perspectives. We have different views on things. About sport quotas, not 5 people in a room would have exactly the same view on sport quotas. Not 5 people in a room would have the same view on black tax and the same opinions on black tax. It's because unconscious bias gets in the way of diversity. We have subtle biases when we hire, when we recruit, when we promote, and when we promote talent management. As leaders, as good leaders, we should recognize this and we should work with this. We should work with this. We should put our own assumptions aside and work for the greater cause or the better good, because that is the way that we can best inspire and motivate our people. Again, you can read through those slides. This is almost to an extent background, but it kind of hopefully opens your eyes a little bit to the specific South African context within which we operate. Talking about norms, values, and beliefs. Leading in a culturally diverse workplace. What are the challenges? The challenges leading in a diverse workplace, and pretty much every workplace in our country today is diverse, is rightness in conflict. Who is right and who is wrong? What makes one individual automatically righter than somebody else within the group? The everyday stresses, and there are lots. Our diversity of values. The interpretation of key words. We interpret words differently. The stupid Afrikaans word of no and no. No means I'm going to do it right now. But when I tell you I'll do it no, it means I'll do it a little later sometime. You would think that no is more emphasis than no, that I would do it actually pretty much immediately. But there's the inflection on words and how we interpret keywords. Gossiping and backbiting in groups or teams. It happens. What are the solutions? As leaders, we need to understand and we have to accept diversity in the workplace. It's part of what we do. We have to develop a common vision, a common story. Why are we together? Why is what we do relevant? Why is it relevant to our society, to the organization, to our family, to our community, and of course to the individual? You as a leader must build that picture. You must tell that story. You must put that vision out there. Another solution is to clear up individual challenges face to face. It's always been, through history, the best way to resolve conflict. Meet up face to face, put your cards on the table, I'll put mine on the table, and we carry on. Develop a list of positive and mutually understood values and behaviors that must be adhered to by all, that you get the buy-in from everybody, everybody adheres to it, and then slowly but surely start building out on that list. By the same token, develop a list of negative behaviors and values that must be eliminated from team interactions. I know of companies that do this as a matter of course in their business meetings. When they get together, these are one of the first things that they do. Guys, what are we doing well? What are we not good at? Right. Can we eliminate this? Yes, we can. Right. Can we enhance this? Can we advocate this other behavior? Yes, we can. Right. Let's do it. Right. And then get agreement, sign a commitment. Commit to equality and respect. I was just referring to these meetings now where on a day-to-day basis, these actions of negative and positive behaviors are actually implemented. It's not just we talk about it and it sounds good somewhere on a vision or a mission statement. We do it. We live by it. And what we say we do, we do. Prevent power bases to form. Ensure that the process is caring and motivational and empowering. Maintain discipline. There's a little bit about mental models, just for your own information. Interestingly enough, write down the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about an older person, or a blind person, or a Muslim, or a black person, or a person in a wheelchair. What's the first thing that comes to mind? And it'll show you how our stereotyping, how our mental models work. Things that, women are and men are. Write that down. Again, you will start to uncover how you perceive the world around you and how you as a leader should be perceiving the world around you. Some visual images, just simple stuff. Imagine what a businesswoman would look like, an entrepreneur, a beach babe, traffic cop, a sailor, a billboard. What do you see when you see those 6 words? I bet that you didn't see this. And I bet you didn't see that. I'll put money on it that was not how you envisioned the sailor to look like. Or an entrepreneur. Or a traffic cop. And billboard. Who saw that as being a billboard? Can you see how we build mental pictures? How we stereotype things? And as leaders, we cannot afford to do that. We cannot afford to stereotype. Again, you can read through that slide about overcoming ethnocentricity. These are all little pointers, little tools that you can or cannot use, or may not use, to assist you and to help you become a better leader, to recognize what a leader is, what's required by a leader, specifically in the South African context, and then to go and question yourself on these topics, on these issues. Get a picture of yourself. How good or how not so good are you at this? What can you do? How can you adapt? How can you improve? How can you mold yourself to become a better leader? Because remember, the payback to good leadership is a team that follows you, a team that is inspired by you, and a team that's motivated by you to do the absolute best they can at any time for you, because they believe in you. Listening and understanding, allowing employees to give input, develop action plans that everybody agrees on, act inclusively in your work. The great words, or in the words of the great Mahatma Gandhi, or maybe the great words of the great Mahatma Gandhi, he says, our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the duty and test of our civilization. This he said many years ago. Many years ago. Our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the duty and the test of how good we are as a civilization. In our workplace today, we work across several generations. We have 20-year-olds, we have 18-year-olds, we have 65-year-olds. We all come with different expectations. We all come with a different bias. The Generation X guys, you know, the youngsters, they're born after 1980. There are huge numbers in our workforce right now. This was the generation that was raised on the internet. They know everything. There's nothing these guys don't know. They are connected. You know, this is the guy that 8 o'clock in the morning would be on WhatsApp, and 10 o'clock at night would be on WhatsApp. In fact, he's always on WhatsApp. But what are their core values that one could work on? They're generally optimistic people. They feel a civic duty. They're confident. They're achievement driven to an extent. They're very sociable. They show great integrity. They understand the concept of diversity because they grew up in schools and in universities and in workplaces where they were, they were surrounded by diversity. The baby boomers. Now, how do I go back to that slide now? I don't believe I can. But then there are the baby boomers. These are the guys that were born around I think it's around the 1970s. Oops, let me just stop that. They were born around the 1970s. Let me just get confirmation that I'm actually quite right about that. But they bring a completely different. It's like, I suppose it's like to an extent me. They were born in 1946 up to the late 1970s. These are the guys that are generally now in senior positions. What are their core values? Think about it. Less optimism, cynicism, distrust government, achievement driven, recognition driven, very much lone wolf type syndrome. Self-sufficiency, we can look after ourselves. Flexibility, I don't know to what extent we are all that flexible. Work to live versus live to work. We work to live versus live to work, whereas the younger generations are different, and we as leaders need to understand this so that we can recognize these traits in our people. Whether our people are 20 years old or whether our people are 60 years old, we need to be able to recognize this and then to motivate accordingly. Talking about motivation, reasons why people stay. That slide was up for a bit. So you can go down there and you will see that only at number 10 will there be fair pay and benefits. Only at number 10 does money come into the picture. This is research done in the States a few years ago. Reasons why people stay: career growth, exciting work challenges, great people, being part of a team, good boss, recognition, fun on the job, autonomy, flexibility, inspiring leadership. People generally don't stay for money. Money is not a motivator. It really is not. Techniques, this is little tools to create an environment for motivation. Setting goals that are specific. Recognize individual differences. Try and get people to a place where they are intrinsically motivated. The project manager should be a role model, show enthusiasm and commitment. Motivation is the inner state that causes an individual to behave in a way that ensures the accomplishment of both personal and project and organizational goals. Motivate comes from the Latin word to move. I was referring to this, intrinsic motivation. People are motivated when they experience a sense of choice. If you as a leader can make that group team member of yours experience a sense of choice in initiating and regulating their actions, they are intrinsically motivated. Extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is when people depend on external inputs like money or a pat on the back or shorter working hours or a bigger company car or any of that that motivates them. That's generally very short-lived, because if I want more money and that motivates me to work harder, then when I get more money, then I'm not going to be that motivated to work harder, and therefore I'm not going to work harder. It's motivation from outside, which is there is a place for, and that's why things like performance bonuses, etc., work well. But it would be preferable if you could be in a place where you are able to intrinsically motivate your people. We're getting to the end of this now. And very often when people are intrinsically motivated, the downside is that they focus very narrowly on the task. It's all about the task, because accomplishing the task will provide them with whatever that extrinsic motivational factor was, whether it was the more money or the car or the shorter hours or the pat on the back or the certificate of accomplishment or any more. And people start rushing through their jobs just for the reward. They regard the task almost as punishment that must be suffered in order to receive the reward. You know, this job I have to do, it's almost a bit of a punishment for me to do it so that I can get the reward at the end of the day. You can understand why these issues, when people are motivated by the extrinsic motivational factors, why people start becoming motivated by money and motivated by it becomes almost counterproductive. And as a good leader, and as a visionary leader, and as a leader that has a storytelling ability that can set a picture out there, the onus is on you to motivate and inspire. Just read through that slide. It just gives you a bit of a structure with respect to motivation, the issue of rewards, the issue of financial rewards and non-financial rewards. Financial rewards being performance related, like commissions and pay, bonuses, etc. Whereas non-financial is more status, maybe location of your office furnishing. Do you have a carpet in your office or not? Do you have 2 windows, only 1 window, etc., etc.? Social rewards like praise, compliments. Now, a good leader needs to understand what motivates his people. And if social rewards motivates John, whereas, let's say, money seems to motivate Jack, then a good leader needs to be able to recognize this in his people and to be able to play to those strengths as best he can, so that at the end of the day, he gets the best results for his team. And then finally, what Coetzee has to say about motivation is that a manager or a leader, this was in 2002, I'm using his words verbatim here, can only create a motivating climate for people to work in. Thus, it is not possible for him or her to motivate people directly. This means he can only provide a motivating climate. Is that right or wrong? Now that you've listened to me for the last hour and a bit, do you agree with him or not? He also says the interaction between a combination of forces within a person's work environment and within the individual determines his or her level of motivation. It's pretty vague, doesn't it? He also says that people are different and managers need to realize that the average person does not exist. Think about that. You would agree or disagree with that. And I thank you. I thank you for